I took a considerable amount of criticism for my post-fight, post-UFC 229 analysis of the events that transpired regarding Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor in the post-fight brawl. And the problem there is most people took what I said and assumed I was a pro Conor. I absolutely am not. In that scenario, yes, Conor did throw a punch, and he, in the build-up, along with Dylan Dennis, contributed significantly to what happened. But on that particular night, it was Nurmagomedov and his team that was coming off looking the way they did. But I am not a fan of Conor McGregor. I do enjoy what he brings to the cage, but at the same time, he's not good for the sport. If he were to settle down and commit himself to mixed martial arts again and say, yeah, look, I'm going to fight fights, and I'm going to challenge for titles, and I'm going to defend titles if I win them, that's fine. That's not what he does. And the manner in which he carried himself, and I felt it's very hypocritical of the UFC to use Conor's attacking of the bus as promotional material and then turn around and penalize Nurmagomedov. And it's unfortunate for what happened, and I can understand Nurmagomedov was incredibly upset. The same thing that doesn't justify his actions either. So, you know, I think the best example was Max Holloway saying, when I fight, my family and his children are often cage side, and that type of antic by a fighter could have resulted in someone being injured, and thankfully that was not the case, an innocent bystander. So again, I don't condone anything that went on, and I don't feel there was any justification in what Nurmagomedov did. There was no justification in what Conor McGregor did earlier. I think they're both ridiculous. Ultimately, I'd like to see us move on, and I want to move towards Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the title. And if Conor wants a rematch, which it's a moneymaker, he needs to earn it. He needs to win a fight or even two before he gets that shot to step back in the cage. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 138, which will emanate from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, on October 27th. I'll be giving you my 6 main card predictions for on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can check them out there. You can also consider buying the bet packs. Again, my bet packs are $15 per show. I also provide a subscription package for a couple of months, which will save you a considerable amount of cash. And again, I provide betting breakdowns for every single fight, analysis for every single fight on the card. I look at parlay options. I look at fantasy pick options. I look at prop bets. I track some scenarios. And I'm coming off a show where I did extremely well. I went 6-6 overall as far as my predictions were good, which is not great, but I did finish 5-1 in the last 6 fights. My big bankroll bundle, which is geared towards people who want to bet on just a fight or two and have a lot more cash to spend, but want those less risky bets, it won 87.74 units. My big reward bundle took home 100 units. So again, and that's for people who just want to have a good time, bet a few bucks here or there, and if they win it, if they win, they win, they don't, they don't. So that's pretty damn impressive. Again, my gold plays were absolute money. I had Nurmagomedov straight up to win. I had Nurmagomedov paired with Jussier Formiga and Derek Lewis in 2-leg parlays, in my big bankroll parlays, in my big risk, big reward. I had the 3 of those guys together in one, and I also had Jussier Formiga in there to win by decision at plus 300, which turned out to be a profitable bet. So certainly consider, investing there. I've had a couple good shows in a row. UFC Fight Night 137, we took home 50 units in my big bankroll bundle and 56 in my big reward bundle. So again, take a look if you're interested. If you're doing something and you're succeeding, all the power to you. As long as you're winning, that's all that matters. Also, this video is being sponsored by melbet.org. Please check them out. They offer a wide variety of betting opportunities, both mixed martial arts related and just about any other sports you can think of. Football, tennis, basketball, hockey, volleyball, table tennis, badminton, baseball. It's all there. So head on over there to melbet.org, check them out. There's a link in my description below if you want to check that out. And see what they're all about. Certainly worth taking a look if you're looking for another alternative in which to bet. And they offer a wide variety of ways to cash out and deposit money as well. And I'm also hoping, I don't know if you can tell or not, I have downloaded some new software to hopefully improve my recording quality. I felt it wasn't that bad in the past, but I certainly am always looking to improve, and I stumbled across a video that offered some tips and advice and some software that I picked up. So hopefully you can let me know in the comments if you feel the quality is better, worse, or the same. On that note, it's time to get to the first main card prediction. Our first fight of the evening takes place in the UFC's welterweight division. Alex the Dominican Nightmare Garcia, 15-4-0, fighting out of Quebec, Canada, takes on the Crusher Court McGee with a current record of 19 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw. Now, Garcia's coming off a loss to Ryan LaFleur. He did upset Muslim Salikov one fight before that, a fight I correctly predicted, but he has gone 3-4 overall over his last 7 appearances, which was preceded by his 2-0 start in the UFC. For McGee, he has lost back-to-back bouts to Sean Strickland and Ben Saunders. He had a controversial hometown win over Dominic Steele, and prior to that, he got knocked out. The only time he's been knocked out in his career, losing to Santiago Ponzinibbio. Physically, McGee 2 inches taller, he'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and Garcia is the younger fighter by 3 years. Court McGee has been out, I believe, almost a year, right in that time frame. Now, the big stylistic comparison or skill set comparison on either side, you've got Garcia's power, but concerning cardio issues, contrasting with McGee's volume game and solid cardio. And you have to wonder which one of those sides of the equation is going to win out. The basic breakdown of this fight is, can McGee use his volume and cardio to overwhelm Garcia's much lower volume and poor level cardio, or will Garcia get the better of him with his power punching and takedown game? When you look at McGee first, statistically, he averages 4.83 strikes landed per minute compared to just 1.81 for Garcia. So that's a sizable advantage for the American. Garcia overall 3-3 in decisions, and he's 2-4 in the UFC in any fights that hit the 3rd round. For Court, his record's not outstanding on the scorecards. 8-6 overall, just 2-3 in his last 5 decisions. And for a guy who's known for his volume and his work ethic, his all-time UFC best output came back in 2013 against Josh Neer, in which he hit the 166 significant strike mark. More recently, his personal best in his last handful of fights has been 62, but in that fight he gave up 78, so he took a lot more than he actually dished out. Over his last 5 fights, he has averaged 52 significant strikes per 3 rounds, or 3.47 per minute, which would suggest Court's volume is slowing down. Now, Garcia is not a volume guy. His offense, as I previously suggested, is built 100% around power. And we have seen McGee have issues with guys that can throw hard. Dominic Steele had a few moments in that fight, and as we previously mentioned, Santiago Ponzinibbio knocked him out. So Garcia, he throws power, he's incredibly dangerous, but there's a risk-reward there. If he can't get the job done early, he has a bit of a drop-off, and we saw that in the Sean Strickland fight, where Strickland outpointed him throughout the bout, and then eventually finished him late. It was a combination of him being tired and just Strickland putting it on him. Overall, Strickland landed 84 significant strikes in that fight. As I mentioned, Garcia does have a good wrestling game, a good takedown game, and McGee's takedown defense has been a bit of a concern when he's threatened. Strickland took him down 3 times, Ryan LaFleur took him down 4 times, and he lost both of those fights. For Alex Garcia, he has landed 8 takedowns in his last 2 fights combined, and at least 1 takedown in 7 of 9 UFC fights, and 3 or more in 6 of those 7 bouts. So the guy knows how to get the fight to the ground and have success. Now, on the flip side, again, we keep going back and forth. It's worth noting that he has had good performances with his wrestling and his takedown game, and lost fights. He landed 5 against Ryan LaFleur and lost that matchup. He landed 3 against Sean Strickland, lost that matchup. He landed 3 against Neil Magny and lost that matchup. He can land takedowns and not win fights because his volume isn't there if he can't control the top game. He only has a single UFC win in a matchup where his opponent landed more than 20 significant strikes, and it was a split decision where he had to land 8 takedowns overall. That was against Sean Spencer a couple of years ago. In this matchup, I would say Alex Garcia either needs to stop him, or he needs to have 2 dominant rounds with takedowns and or hurt him. Stop him or hurt him, or have 2 dominant rounds with takedowns and top control. McGee, on the other hand, he can win this fight with volume over 3 rounds. He can win it with volume over the last 2 rounds. He could score a late TKO stoppage if Garcia gasses. He is probably going to give up takedowns, and he needs to get up, force Garcia to work hard to keep him down, and take advantage of it once he's on his feet. Garcia does train out of Montreal, so technically he has home field advantage here, but I think, again, as the Court's going to get up from the takedowns, he's going to use his reach and movement and his kicking game to outpoint Garcia. He'll pull away in rounds 2 and 3. I think this is a good matchup for Court if he can avoid the power of Alex Garcia and make those takedowns actually work against the Dominican Nightmare by making them energy expenditures that don't actually produce anything, and my prediction is Court McGee to defeat Alex Garcia by decision. Fight number 2 on the main card transpires in the UFC's light heavyweight division as Gian Villante, 16-10-0, takes on Ed Shortfuse Herman with a current record of 24 wins, 13 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Herman is 1-2 since jumping up to the light heavyweight division. He has back-to-back losses to Nikita Krylov and CB Dollaway. He did have a comeback victory over Tim Boetsch in his divisional re-debut. For Villante, he is 1-3 in his last 4. He's had a very up-and-down run. He's gone to 3 straight split decision losses, and overall in his UFC career, he is 6-7. Gian is the taller man by 2 inches. He will actually give up an inch of reach to Herman. Villante is the younger fighter by 5 years. Now, when you look at these 2 individuals and their respective careers, it could be argued that Herman has overachieved based on what physical gifts he has available to him, where Villante has underachieved. We'll see how that continues to play out here. For Gian Villante, he has 10 wins by knockout, but he also has 4 losses. These are some of the big stats that jump off the page at me. Conversely, Ed Herman, 6 wins by knockout, but his big number is the 13 submission victories. He also has mounting losses by finish with 9 overall, including 3 by knockout. When you look at Ed Herman, he's a gritty fighter. He's willing to bang it out. He's not overly fleet of foot, not a great wrestler, but he's one of those guys who won't go away unless you absolutely hammer him. For Villante, the guy's got power in his hands. He moves fairly well, and he's got a decent kicking arsenal with a good jab, but he has poor cardio and questionable fight IQ. Now, with Ed Herman, the guy has a good grappling game, but his takedown defense is not great. He can work off his back, but if he gets taken down too much, it's going to cost his cardio, and he's going to lose a positional battle overall. He was taken down 6 times by CB Dollaway, 3 by Talis Leitis. If you go back to his bout with Jacare, he was taken down twice, and he has lost the last 5 fights where he was taken down at least twice. And it's worth noting he hasn't scored a submission win since 2012. That is an avenue that we could look for Villante to exploit. He has decent wrestling, but he's not an overwhelming wrestler. Over his last 7 fights, he scored 0 takedowns. His brother-in-law is Chris Weidman. You would look at that and you would think, Villante, here's an opportunity for you to work your wrestling, mix it up, be diverse, and see if you can make that work for you. Where Villante does have an advantage in an area he should look to exploit as well is he is the more active striker. He has landed 50 or better strikes in each of his last 5 fights. The last 3 men to beat him have landed 50, 86, and 94 significant strikes. While the 50 is closer to Ed Herman's output level, the 86 and 94 are areas that Ed Herman very rarely, if ever, gets even a sniff of. Villante does very good with the jab and his low kicks to beat up his opponents at range. We saw him absolutely blister Corey Anderson with low kicks before finishing him. And in this fight, he's physically the bigger man, and I would give Villante a slight edge in speed overall when it compares to how Ed Herman moves. Now, Villante, as I said, he's known to gas and to start to give away rounds. He will lose fights that he should win, and we have seen him go to 3 straight split decisions, which tells me he has a difficult time edging out opponents when fights are not going to be finished. His volume tends to drop off, he lets rounds get away from him, he gets very sloppy, and he can be hurt, and that is a major concern. Villante is vulnerable to getting knocked out. Tom Lawler knocked him out in a fight that Villante was looking very good in, and he couldn't and Lawler just put him down with one massive shot. And Ed Herman's not the type of guy who can finish guys, but he still can crack. He's not a huge knockout threat, but he still can do damage. Herman, though, on the other side, he's not a big volume fighter, and he's not a great wrestler. Those are things that are going against him. Villante should land more strikes, and he should land better strikes, and he needs to get himself ahead in rounds 1 and 2 before he starts to fade. And that's crucial. Versus a plodding Ed Herman, look for Villante's low kicks to really measure well with the judges and to take away some of his movement and to score significant points, make him more vulnerable to what Villante has to offer. And my prediction is Gian Villante to defeat Ed Herman by decision. Fight number 3 in the main card transpires in the UFC's bantamweight division as Andre the Asian sensation Soukhamthath, 12 wins and 6 losses, takes on the debuting Jonathan Dragon Martinez with a record of 9 wins and a single defeat. Now, Gavin Tucker, fighting out of Nova Scotia, was forced to pull out of this fight. Obviously, he would have been crowd favorite fighting in the East Coast in Canada. It's very unfortunate he's not here. Hopefully, he'll get back in there as soon as possible. When he did pull out, it was early October. He's giving Martinez a couple of weeks to prepare for his professional debut, or UFC debut, not professional. Soukhamthath, he's coming off a loss to Sean O'Malley. Overall, he's 1-3 in the promotion, with his lone victory a come-from-behind defeat of Luke Sanders. For Martinez, he actually hasn't fought in 13 months, and his only career loss was a DQ loss for landing an illegal knee against former UFC fighter Matt Schnell. For Soukhamthath, he's physically 1 inch taller. The reach, I'm not sure how they stack up, and Andre is the younger fighter by 2 years. Now, looking at the new guy first, we're trying to get a feel for what he brings to the table. He has 5 wins by knockout, 2 submission victories, and 2 decision victories. Of his 7 finishes, just 3 have come in the first round, which tells us he's got some experience fighting in longer bouts. His last 3 victories, so excluding the Schnell defeat, his opponents are combined 25 wins and 25 losses. 1 fighter over 500, 1 fighter at 500, 1 fighter slightly below. So he's not fighting cans, but he's not fighting world beaters either. So this is a step up in competition as far as quality. Now, he showed in his last fight that he can grapple despite only having a couple of submission victories. He scored a decent armbar in a bout where he was taken down and lashed on fairly quick. He's shown he can sweep if put on his back, and he's got a nice guillotine choke. He utilized that against Schnell on a takedown attempt. I can't remember if it was a guillotine or a ninja choke. Either way, he locked it up and forced Schnell to his back in that position, went for a rear naked choke as well, ultimately running foul with the rear naked with the illegal knee. When he's standing, he throws lots of kicks, low and body kicks. He'll throw front kick to the middle, which can be a nice technique as well. As I said, against Schnell, he landed a knee, so he got a little overzealous in that matchup, and it cost him, but he was looking fairly good prior to the disqualification. For Soukhamthath, the big knock on him has been his lack of urgency and just an abysmal fighting IQ. He tends to let his opponents attack first. Overall, he's 1-6 in decisions, which is indicative of a fighter who doesn't dictate the pace, and despite having some solid striking chops, allows them to land first with regularity. Now, as I said, his terrible fight IQ, it was on display in his last matchup against Sean O'Malley. O'Malley had a badly injured foot, and Soukhamthath took him down and kept him on the mat instead of forcing him to stand on his feet and deal with that. He might have been able to get a stoppage. Maybe O'Malley couldn't have continued. Either way, it was a horrible decision. Joe Rogan certainly not berated, but at least commented upon his just bad decision-making and that costing him the fight. We also saw that in the Albert Morales matchup. He was having a lot of success with body shots, and then I believe he engaged in a grappling match at one point, a grappling exchange at one point, and got taken down, and that was he lost the decision. He does have power in his hands, not to rag on him too much. He has power in his hands, 8 wins by knockout. He works well behind a jab. He'll sit in the pocket and throw, likes to slip and rip. But again, he's lax with his defense. He's willing to rely on his ability to absorb damage and land more. And again, we see that's not working for him, but he appears fairly set in his ways. When he fought Sanders, he was getting backed up in the first round, arguably lost the first round, was incredibly tentative. He was fighting off the cage and just too willing to sit back and counter. He came out, he's a little busier in round 2 and got the finish. Against Albert Morales, same situation. Better round 2, didn't get the finish, didn't get the victory. So that's kind of a trend with him. It's hard to back Soukhamthath here if he can't stop his opponent. And Martinez has never been finished and looked fairly good. Look for that kicking offense of the Dragon to keep Soukhamthath on the outside, play a big role here as he outpoints him. And my prediction is Jonathan Martinez to defeat Andre Soukhamthath by decision. Fight number 4 on the main card takes place in the UFC's light heavyweight division as the 11th ranked Misha Cirkunov, 13-4-0, a Latvian fighting and training out of Canada, takes on the 14th ranked Patrick Durkin Cummins with a current record of 10 wins and 4 losses. Now, Cirkunov's lost back-to-back matchups coming into this, the first 2 losses of his career since 2012. He has taken some time off as a result. He did start his UFC run 4-0, so he's looking to rebound and get some of that shine back on him. For Cummins, he's had a very up and down run in the promotion. He lost his debut to DC. He then went on a 3-fight winning streak. He then went through a 1-3 stretch, rallied with back-to-back wins, and now he's coming off a loss to Corey Anderson, which I correctly predicted. Physically, Misha 1 inch taller, he'll have a 1 inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by 7 years. Now, both fighters have very strong grappling skill sets. Misha comes from a judo background, he's also a BJJ black belt, where Cummins is an exceptionally talented wrestler. Both fighters also appear to have major flaws in their game. Cummins takes a lot of damage, he keeps moving forward, his striking, defense, and offense for that matter is very much still a work in progress. I feel like I've been saying that for a couple of years now, and because he takes so much damage, it ultimately has led to some knockouts. For Cirkunov, he's been finished in each of his last 2 fights, knocked out by Volkan Oezdemir, TKO'd by Glover Teixeira, and ultimately it looked like he didn't respond well to taking damage and got in some bad spots, especially in the Glover fight, and couldn't get out of them. The Cirkunov fight, it was just one shot and down he goes. Now, when you look at that fight against Glover, though, he landed some bombs. Misha was landing some big shots prior to the exchange that put him in a bad spot. But again, once he was taken down, he got his back taken, and he was in serious trouble and finished with strikes. If Misha can flip the script there and get into a better position and get into a dominant position on the mat. The guy is fantastic. He's excellent ground and pound and very good submissions. And he gets a lot of his top position control from the clinch. He's an exceptionally good fighter in the clinch. He can get the fight to the mat, and then from there he's capable of finishing his opponent off. And Patrick Cummins is coming off a fight where he was badly out-wrestled by Corey Anderson, gave up 12 takedowns. If Misha can take him down, he could very much find similar success. Was Patrick Cummins' performance against Corey Anderson an oddity or a trend? That's worth discussing. That's worth looking at. I would say it's I wouldn't say it's a trend, but at the same time, I wouldn't say it's an oddity. Cummins is one of these guys who's got great wrestling, but because of his striking game is not as strong in MMA, it opens up vulnerabilities in the way you move and what you're vulnerable to from a fighter who has a better striking, a better melded game. And I think that's what Corey Anderson brings to the table. Cummins offensively has put up some excellent takedown numbers and used his top game to grind out victories. Conversely, he's also put up good takedown numbers as well in fights that he has lost and taken a lot of damage in the process. He beat Rafael Feijoa but got absolutely smashed to hell between takedowns. He lost to Glover Teixeira despite taking him down 4 times. He eventually got put away in that matchup. His striking, as I said, it's a struggle. It's still very raw. It's still very open, and he suffers as a result. Cummins has been knocked out on multiple occasions. Little Nog knocked him out, Glover, OSP, Daniel Cormier. Jan Blachowicz almost stopped him in the first round before Cummins was able to rally and get the decision victory. Cummins feasts on opponents with poor takedown defense and poor cardio. And Misha could tick one or both of those boxes. Absolutely he could. But I think ultimately in this matchup, it's going to be Misha's judo that's going to make it difficult for Cummins to get in to the mat with regularity. And unless Patrick Cummins can really shoot a solid low double, he's just not going to be able to muscle Misha to the mat. Once he gets inside, Misha's able to clinch up with him. I think the big thing is Misha has that big power, and that's going to keep Patrick Cummins from shooting with confidence and moving with confidence. Cirkunov has big power. He can do damage with his hands and do damage with regularity. He's lost to a pair of superior strikers. That's not what Patrick Cummins brings to the table. I think Cirkunov clips him, pounds him out on the mat, and my prediction is Misha Cirkunov to defeat Patrick Cummins by TKO. In the co-main event of the evening, one of the legends of the sport, the greatest of all time, the GOAT, the Russian Hammer, Artem Lobov, 14 wins, 14 losses, and 1 draw with a single no contest, returns to action taking on Michael, the Menace Johnson, with a current record of 19 wins and 2 defeats. Now, Lobov had been scheduled to face Zubahir Tuhugov, but of course that fight fell through with Tuhugov's involvement in the UFC 229 melee, and as a result, Michael Johnson steps in on a couple weeks' notice to face Lobov. It was interesting. Lobov was actually pleading with the UFC to let Tuhugov stay so he could make him answer for his involvement. I don't think things would have gone well for Artem, but I could be wrong. Now, Johnson's coming off a split decision win over Andre Fili to to get his first win in the featherweight division after an unsuccessful divisional debut. He has won just one of his last 6 matchups prior to that victory, so that was a huge win for Johnson. For Lobov, he has lost back-to-back fights to the aforementioned Fili and Cub Swanson. He did have back-to-back wins to kind of gain some traction and relevancy in not so much relevancy, but just to be able to say, hey, I belong for a little bit longer in the UFC. Overall, he is 2-4. Physically, Johnson 1 inch taller, but he will have a sizable 8-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. Now, it's interesting. I was listening. I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast I was listening to. I love that podcast. Great show. I hope it makes it. Check it out. Now, yeah, I was listening to that, and they were talking about some of the reasons. They were talking about hearing things out of Connor's camp. One of the reasons he keeps Artem Lobov around is a couple things. He's an easy guy to hit, and he's tough as fucking nails. He takes a lot of damage, and he doesn't go away. And that's a perfect thing to have for a striker like Connor to really beat, to test out his striking and to, just get his ego up. He's essentially a human punching bag, but that's not exactly the type of description you want to have as a pro fighter. So for Lobov, maybe his record reflects that. Now, a lot of guys I struggle to see. He's entertaining. He had a good run on the show, but he's not the type of guy you think the UFC is going to hold on to much longer if they don't have cause to. Now, Michael Johnson, on the other hand, he's far from he's an incredibly talented fighter, but he's far from a flawed fighter. He does a lot of things right, but there are some massive holes in his game. Now, in his last fight, Johnson overcame those issues to pick up a victory. It was controversial. It was close, but his cardio didn't show up as a big issue. His failing output wasn't a big question either, as he kept pushing and he actually picked up the pace. His chin, which has been questionable at times, wasn't on display, and his poor submission D, he was able to get out of some spots, including a rear naked choke attempt that nearly sealed the deal early. So the question is here, how does Lobov win this fight? And the way I look at it, he needs to hurt Michael Johnson early, either get the finish or hurt him to the point where he takes away his ability to fight properly, and then is able to continually press forward and and attack and engage and really test Johnson's will and his cardio. If Johnson slows down, Lobov has to go. Lobov, he's found success on the show on The Ultimate Fighter by cornering opponents and pressuring them, leading to either a knockout victory or a decisive decision. That's what he needs to do here. But against fighters like this, like Michael Johnson, who are at a different level, and the guys Lobov is fighting in the show and have some more time to prepare for a matchup, that is far more difficult, and that's why Lobov's style hasn't translated as well at the UFC level. Now, as I said, Johnson, he gets tired. That can cost him. He can also be knocked out. But the guy is a workhorse early on. He can. The way I look at him here, he has the speed advantage. He has the volume advantage. He has the technical advantage. He has the physical advantages here. Johnson has the ability to outwork him, use that volume, use that speed, use that movement to create major issues for Artem. Lobov needs his opponent to sit down and exchange with him in front. He gets frustrated if they don't. Michael Johnson will most likely not do that. Also, don't discredit Michael Johnson's wrestling. He could look to score a takedown or two against Lobov, who appears to be vulnerable to that. I don't know if he'll want to sway too much from his regular game plan, but that's something that MJ could entertain. Again, Johnson needs to be careful of that major drop-off and finish strong after round one. The short notice is a bit of a concern, but Lobov has had limited time to prep, and he could be distracted with everything that's gone on with his camp, and that's a factor as well. Artem, I think he'll hang around. He's going to take a lot of damage. We've seen him hurt in one of his more recent fights. Again, I believe it was against Andre Feely, but he's going to struggle to land too much offense here, and as long as Johnson doesn't get clipped with a fluke punch, this is Johnson's fight to win, so my prediction is Michael Johnson to defeat Artem Lobov by decision. And finally, in the main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's light heavyweight division, is the number 2 ranked Volkan Oezdemir, former title challenger, fighting out of Switzerland with a record of 15 wins and 2 losses, takes on Anthony Lionheart Smith, currently ranked 10th in the division, with a current record of 30 wins and 13 defeats. Now, Anthony Smith could be the next title challenger if he can win a fight here and maybe one more. Obviously, with John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson facing off, the UFC is going to be looking for some new blood to throw in with the winner of that matchup if we don't get to see Jones DC right away. And we could see the winner of this fight, who neither one of those individuals has faced yet, get thrown into the mix. Oezdemir, he's already been there and he's looking to get back. Anthony Smith still very much hungry. Now, Smith has picked up back-to-back wins over former title challengers Rashad Evans and Shogun, who guys at the end of their career. Obviously, Evans retiring, Shogun another fighter who's closing in the end of it. But overall, Smith 5-1 in his last 6. He's had some very good fights both at middleweight and at light heavyweight, and even his loss was an entertaining and impressive match performance. For Oezdemir, he's returning after his UFC 220 title fight loss. He had won 5 consecutive, including 3 in the UFC. He had back-to-back knockout victories over Misha Cirkunov and Jimmy Manawa to procure that title shot, which was, as I said, ultimately unsuccessful. For Smith, he's 2 inches taller. He stands 6'4". It'll be a 1-inch reach advantage for Smith as well. Oezdemir is the younger fighter by a year. Now, it's worth noting that Anthony Smith has fought a total of 2 minutes and 22 seconds at light heavyweight, at least in the UFC. He's looked good, but now he's facing an opponent who's in a better position as far as where the prime of their career is. He's not fighting a guy who's at the end of their career as he had in his previous 2 bouts. For Volkan Oezdemir, though, his run at light heavyweight, despite getting a title shot, hasn't been all roses and sunshine. He looked underwhelming in a short notice debut, then smashed through 2 opponents in a combined 1 minute and 10 seconds, which isn't a long drawn-out fight, and then got dominated by Daniel Cormier. So he's had a very small sample size of really effective, impressive performances. Again, I don't put too much stock. When you knock guys out quickly, that's fantastic, but over the long term, that doesn't tell me enough about you. What do you do in a 3-round war? What do you do when you face adversity? And I think that's something worth noting here. Smith has been in those spots in the UFC. Oezdemir really has not, or at least he hasn't responded well. Now, when you look at Anthony Smith, the guy has some cardio issues, has been known to slow down, but he carries a torrid pace. He is a go-out-on-his-shield type of fighter, and that's one of the reasons a lot of people like him. I've been following him since the Strikeforce days. A lot of people are big fans of this guy. And Oezdemir has been known to slow down when pushed, and not just in the DC fight, not just in the OSP fight. He did it on the regional scene as well. We really haven't seen him in a back-and-forth battle, and that's a big question. If Anthony Smith pushes him and doesn't go away when Volkan lands his first shot, what's going to happen? Now, I would say in addition to that cardio, the one intangible could be Smith's grappling game. Volkan has struggled if put on his back, and while Smith doesn't have an amazing wrestling attack, he's a very good grappler, very good transitional grappler, very opportunistic, and once he gets you to the ground, he's very good at maintaining position and landing big shots and threatening with submissions. And if he can create a scramble situation or even a knockdown situation, look for Oezdemir to be in some serious trouble. Now, for Oezdemir to win this fight, he needs to press forward, land that power, and really back Anthony Smith up. Smith has been finished on multiple occasions because of his aggression. He's very hittable, and that's something Oezdemir needs to continue to show us, that he has that stopping power. As I said, both fighters are aggressive. I would say overall Oezdemir has the slightly better power situation going on, even though Smith can do damage with one shot. It's Smith's more death by accumulation, just wear guys out and just crack them until they can't take it anymore. If Smith can avoid taking that direct hit or absorb it and keep coming, that's a massive check mark in his win column scenario. He should be able to outwork Oezdemir over a prolonged fight if it goes longer than 60 or 70 seconds. Look for Smith to use his length to back him up and batter Volkan, especially in the clinch with elbows and knees. If they go to the floor, Smith will attack with a combination of ground and pound and sub attempts. Look for Volkan to suffer from that post-title fight letdown scenario. Again, I talk about it a lot. It doesn't always happen, but more often than not, when a fighter gets a shot at the title, they lose. Their next fight, they come out and have a very poor performance. And it's just a case of they've got to the top of the mountain, they've been defeated, and now it's like, how do I rebuild? How do I find motivation? What do I do in the gym? What do I have to do to be better? And it's very much different from that first career loss. When you have that first career loss, you look at it and you go, okay, I've been beat, I need to rework some things, I can still move up there. When you have that first title fight loss, or maybe only title fight loss, it's the attitude of, is that the peak of my career? Is that it? Am I going to get another opportunity to fight? I don't know, for the championship at least. So they need to find motivation. A lot of fighters struggle to do that, and that's definitely concerning. Smith, I think, is a better place with momentum. What he's done recently, he's a dangerous fighter, and if he gets rolling, Oezdemir is going to struggle. And my prediction is Anthony Smith to defeat Volkan Oezdemir by TKO. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 138. As per usual, all of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so please check them out. The bet packs will also be available for $15 in the bet shop. And again, if you're having success doing your own thing, certainly keep doing it. If you're looking for an alternative with some advice and I've had some success recently, consider purchasing my bet pack. Head over to melbet.org if you want to find a new betting site to work with, or if you're a first-time bettor, there is a link in the description you can follow below. You can check me out on Twitter at KO_predictions. I'm also on Facebook and YouTube. We're nearing 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is fantastic. I'd love to hit that mark very soon. On that note, I got to get out of here because we have a heck of a lot of fights coming up. I believe we have 9 fights over the next 7 weeks. That's a lot of work for me, and hopefully we can finish strong. I'm still looking to hit that 300 fight correct prediction mark in a calendar year, so we'll see if we can get there. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys, and I will talk to you soon.